Wakeham.
Wakeham.
Yeah.
Everybody, this is the Uncanny Omar with Mat Wakeham. How is it going, Matt? Thank you for joining me.
I'm very good. Shall I call you Uncanny or Omar?
Omar's fine. Omar's fine. Please don't. You don't have to call me Uncanny.
Yeah, I'm great, Omar. Thanks so much for having me on.
You are so welcome. Thank you. Thank you for being here. And I know we had the schedule late last year, but things get, life happens, and that's okay. So, Matt, tell me a little bit
And we're
about yourself.
not in the mid of all of the other interviews that were going on at the time as well. I think this is like a nice little break, and I've got a good feeling about this one, Omar.
Okay, we got a good feeling about this one. We shall see. We shall see.
Yeah, exactly.
So, tell me a little bit about yourself. And I of course, got to do an overview of the Phoo Action Deluxe Edition. It's a very big, beautiful book that you, of course, put together and were a big part of. And then, but you've been in the industry for quite a number of years. So why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
That's just by benefit of being an old man.
I didn't say it. I didn't say it. That I did not say that.
I'll get in there before the comments underneath just say, I mean, I've been in media, I mean, for a long time. So, it's always a big question when people say, so tell me, I'm like, God, what's the potted history I tell? But, obviously, I have a professional and personal relationship with Jamie Hewlett, which is pertinent to this part of my career. I went to the same art school as Jamie, and a school of artists who appeared in a British publication that was called Deadline, where Tank Girl started. So him and Philip Bond and Alan Martin and lots of our other friends went to that art school. I was a couple of years after them. So I met Jamie in 1988. And I was around when all that work was going on. And then when I left art school, I was sort of, there was like a little comic scene. It's quite interesting. I was actually watching the Mignola Hellboy documentary recently, and there's that period where him and the other guys were all living in that block, and working on all their various pieces, it was really reminiscent of that. Philip, I shared a flat with Alan and with Glyn Dillon, and Jamie and Alan had lived together. Philip lived next door to Alan, so it was a real community and little scene down here on the south coast of England for a while, where we were all sort of living in each other's pockets, and Jamie had a studio, and that would be sort of a hub where we'd all meet up. So I was around all that, doing bits and pieces of graphic design and little bits of writing. And then I went off to art school for a couple of years, came back, and Jamie was doing this particular story, which was called Get the Freebies at the time, in a magazine here called The Face. I don't know if that's specific to this book that I've created, Phoo Action. I've then gone on to do lots of other things. I mean, after Jamie did Get the Freebies, he famously, of course, moved out of the South Coast and moved in with Damon Albarn, then of Blur, and they created Gorillaz together. And I was the first person who was hired on the visual side. Jamie hired me. I worked alongside him on the creation of what became known as Phase 1, which is the self-titled or the eponymous Gorillaz album.
One with great album, man.
I mean, out of nowhere, really, right? I mean, it's where do you start with that?
What year was that when that was happening?
I think Jamie must have moved to London like late 98. I'd left the Worthing scene and gone off to art school. I'd gone off and done a fine art degree. I'd my first what I'd first trained in was as a graphic designer, which is something I've obviously come back to. But we had like sort of when I left art school, early 80s, there was a massive recession, early 80s, and I was a young designer, and it was really hard to get work. So I went back into education. Then I went off to art school. I came back around 97, moved to London, and then Jamie moved up the year afterwards. So that was 98. They were living together then, and they sort of come up with the idea in around 99. And Jamie, so I was asked to work on it, and sometime in 99, it's very hazy, quite a long time ago. So I worked on it from then. I worked on it from 99 to 03, I think. So the 4 years, the whole release cycle of the first album.
Did you all ever imagine the popularity of how big it would get?
So I've heard a few interviews with myself now, and I kind of have a stock answer to this, and it's it's like so funny. I think I'm realizing it's becoming a stock answer. That like only in that I'd listen back to a couple of like, oh, I've said that. I've said the same thing. So when you work on things, like obviously you're putting everything into it, and you think it's good, right? So you wouldn't be doing it if you didn't think it was good. And some things hit. Some things hit and some things don't, and you can never be sure, right? Because you're still you're still pouring all of your energy, all of your attention into it. But how I answer this, and it is like the last time I saw Damon was quite a while ago, where because I don't live in London anymore. I left London in 2017. I've moved back down to the South Coast, where
you're not in LA, but you got a Lakers hat on. I was wondering where you moved.
Yeah, no, I'm a Lakers fan.
Wow.
because and we didn't have basketball here when I was a kid, and so obviously, like, I didn't know about the rest of the league, and I saw Kareem Abdul-Jabbar in Game of Death. And I was just like, because I was a massive, I was a massive Bruce Lee fan.
Yeah.
And I was like, who's that? And I was like, who's that guy? He's amazing. And then I found out. So yeah, I've been like, I mean, you couldn't watch games here. Like basketball wasn't even a thing here. So yeah, I've been a Lakers fan since I was a kid. And then it's only then you find out it's like, oh, of course, that's like liking Manchester United. It's like the big franchise. I still am. Let's not talk about basketball, because I could go on about it. We could do one of that. We could do like a big question about what the Luka trade was about, but we're not going to do that. So as I was saying, so when last time I saw Damon was in 2017, and that was at they'd had a long break in Gorillaz, and they just got back together and they released the album Humans, and they had a showcase for it, where there was lots of collaborations on that, and Del the Funky Homo Sapien was flown over for it, and Noel Gallagher was on stage. It was amazing. It was an amazing show, and like I think an undervalued Gorillaz album. Actually, I really like Humans.
That's one of my daughter's favorites.
Your daughter's got great taste.
She does, man. She does.
Yeah. Can't think. I mean, well done, Omar. I can't think why. Looking at your shelves behind you, it's like. But yeah. So I saw Damon backstage afterwards. And we hadn't seen each other for a few years anyway, because I was off working in other media. I wasn't part of the band anymore. And we had a big hug, and he said to me, what you said, he said, can you believe, you said you were a founding member of this. It's like, you helped kick this off. Did you think it was going to become this, And I was like, and I just said, look, Damien, I just sort of reflected back to him. We always wanted it to be this. We always thought it could be this. And it's just become what we dreamed, So, it's I thought it had that potential, but there was a lot of fear around it as well. Like, it's like the record company were really frightened. Obviously Damon was like was like within the UK was a big star, was one of their big stars, and they were concerned how I think he got the deal. They got the deal because I think, it seemed like it would be like a small side project for him. And then he'd go back and be doing his Blur albums. I don't think anyone in the record company ever envisaged it would be this, just take over and become his stadium band,
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that I there was a lot of concern in the record in the record label about how they could present it, and there was there was a lot of confusion at the beginning about. I mean, Damien even tried out other people singing on it, because it was even that level of, could he sing on it? Would that work? Shouldn't should he? Shouldn't he? Could they do interviews? All of those things. We were building it from the ground up. No one had done it, but I mean, obviously there'd been things like the Archies had animated bands, and there were the Banana Splits, and all of those things were things that Jamie and I were into, and they were influences for it, and that obviously went into building the idea of it. But at the same time, still, there's never been anything like Gorillaz before or after.
It was unique too for the time, and oh my gosh, it was crazy. Like and I don't know if people remember what it was like back then when the music videos started coming out, when people still played music video on MTV and VH1.
Well, I mean,
right? And I remember thinking, what does the band look like? Like, this is a cartoon, right? Like, there's all this mystery. The internet was kind of still fresh and new to a lot of us.
Yeah. Well, we there was a couple of things really that that obviously, obviously the music and the art are massive contributing factor. It's two great artists working together and creating something completely unexpected. But also, it was, as you say, it was the tail end of music videos still being important.
Absolutely.
So it's like the doors that those music videos smashed open. The Clint Eastwood video in particular, I think.
Yes.
With the zombie gorillas coming out of the graveyard. I mean, it's just it's iconic. But also, as you've mentioned as well, we were just on the cusp of Web 2.0. So this was my remit within the band. I was in charge of creating the digital experience and personas, how you could interact with the property. I mean, at the time, I didn't. I tell this story as well. It's like at the end, towards the end of the release cycle, we started winning awards for like the best marketing campaign, and it kind of fried my brain because of course the industry looked at it as like, oh, they've done this brilliant campaign, they've done these amazing covers, and they've created this site, and they've done these animations, and it's all about these, it's about these characters, and they're doing the interviews. We didn't think about it as a marketing campaign. We were just creating something, and it kind of, I had to take a step back because I was like, I'm not bloody, I don't do marketing. This is just coming from from the tradition of comics and wanting to work in film and TV. I was just thinking about it as storytelling, and just that this is just another platform to tell stories on. And also I was quite interested in, I'd gone off and studied fine art actually, and one of the things that I was quite interested in is how you could tell like what was called transmedia at the time. So you were working across, you were telling a story across different platforms. So I think there's a thing that Gorillaz fans talk about, which is like the lore. And I think there's a misconception. If you like, a lot of younger fans have come to it when there's a lot of story already happened, and then there's these explainer Gorillaz YouTube videos that try and make sense of all the story, but it was never supposed to be like a story that was read as an ongoing narrative. It was all about, we were trying to, as much as possible, make it feel like the band were responsive in the moment. So even to the and mirroring a real band, and also sort of satirizing bands that are created by the industry and put together. So they even so much so that there was an EP put out on a subsidiary indie label of the major label that they were signed to before it was then released on a major label. So and we tried to be, we did a lot of the story was told just through band interviews. So their voices and their story was coming out through what they said. So like as I'm telling you, trying to piece together a coherent narrative of 30 years in the industry, that's what we were trying to do for each of the characters.
And then at what point did you guys come back to do? Okay, so Gorillaz had taken off, and then with this magazine that was coming out, which was only available over there, by the way. This is why, when I talked to you and I talked to Will and the wonderful folks at Titan that helped put this beautiful, beautiful book together last year, I had never heard of this magazine. But the beauty of like,
so for everyone there, this is when you're saying the magazine.
Oh yes,
this is episode 1. So Phoo Action started off as, here you go, get the freebies, an exclusive new strip by the creator of Tank Girl. Yeah. So this is, so as you can see, Keith Flint is on the cover, who was originally the vibes man in The Prodigy, and then had just had his first vocal performance on Firestarter, and had become a massive, for somebody looking so punk, was a major pop star and was a major celebrity at that time. So this was this is a fashion, as you can see, you saw the comics first there. This is a fashion and style magazine talking about cultural trends. Actually, what's that? There's a piece about 2000 AD there.
Hey.
But yeah, they see an interview with Uma Thurman. There's the Prodigy piece. So it was all this. This was actually, it's quite an interesting magazine, and there's a fashion story there. I nearly flashed some nudity at you. I remembered with that. Yeah, there's another fashion story, and here in the back is Jamie's strip. Get the freebies. This magazine had started in the 80s, and this is going to sound crazy to your Gen Z audience, and maybe even older, even millennial audiences. That there hadn't been a publication before that pulled together all of popular culture and youth culture. There had been music magazines, there were film magazines, there were fashion magazines, there were cultural magazines. No one had put it together in one place. So this really was our internet. We bought this every month to find out what was cool, what was going on, what films were coming out, who was making what albums. Like there's Johnny Marr, who was the guitarist of the Smiths before. So yeah, it's crazy to think that. You can't imagine that now. Like no one had thought of doing that until the early 80s, putting everything together in one place. But it was a seismic shift. So Jamie getting this comic strip in here was a real feather in his cap. It did something to set him apart. He wasn't doing, like, after Tank Girl had finished and Deadline had closed. Obviously, he'd done Tank Girl: The Odyssey with Dark Horse, but he wasn't really interested in doing ongoing serialized comics. It wasn't really. It didn't really suit his spontaneous style of working, and he wasn't interested in work. Like you didn't really want to go back to 2000 AD and do strips. And here he got to do something that was far more like taking. There'd always been within Tank Girl, there'd always been music and culture, but it was kind of in the marginalia. Around the edges. It was like, there'd be the soundtrack would be 1 month by the Pixies. There'd be a stunt coordinator, Jamie would write lyrics in the side, maybe a pop star would turn up in, as part, I think there's one where, someone from the Undertones turns up, or Jack Kerouac might have been, so that it would cross, there'd be meta stories. But in this, Jamie, it's really is a full-on assault, and what actually it's like, it's what became to be part of Gorillaz as well, which is underpinning its ethos was a deconstruction of what celebrity is and what fame is. He did that here first, and in quite a scurrilous way, like really taking the piss. There's no other way. There's no other way to say it, this, jokes about putting cigarettes out in the eyes of music impersonators, and so the two stars of it are these are like they're famous within this world, but they're they're de facto superheroes, but it's no superhero story as you would recognize it.
Well, and I think that was at that time something that was big here in America, and has always been big, right, in the UK. I think in America with indie comics, that term indie comics, I think, went to stuff like, I think as early as I can remember, was in 1988. I think a friend of mine, his dad was a collector of the Mirage TMNT comics. He was a big comic book guy, and that was the first time I saw, or I strayed away from superhero comics. I was like, "What is this?" And he had like the first 4 issues or 3 issues of the TMNT, and then that led into Usagi, the Duck books, and then Cerebus and things like that.
Yeah.
It wasn't. Oh, the only place
I'll have friends who'll be really happy you've mentioned Cerebus. I've got
Sims. No, I never did finish reading Sims Cerebus. Unfortunately, I think I read the first 150 issues or so.
Wow.
I think he did 300 altogether.
My God.
My point was, like, unless you were going to a comic book store, and even not all comic book stores, you really didn't know like what an independent comic was, what mature, like, there were things Zen.
Well, there's obviously more
late 90s. In the late 90s,
more edition of it here. So
and that's something I've learned throughout the years.
So British, obviously,
you guys were way ahead over there.
Well, we weren't. We weren't ahead. It was so it's like you guys obviously talk about the British invasion when Alan Moore and Grant Morrison and Steve Dillon and etc. came over and started working on your titles, but there are homegrown US titles,
the DC stuff, absolutely,
DC and Marvel stuff, but there are homegrown talent, and so it's like US titles are the imports here, so it's like the staples for us were 2000 AD was the big publication here,
and that was an anthology series, which here in America it
was a month.
We tried.
It was monthly here, so it was. I came up through reading Dread, but and it was just there was a time when I just I couldn't get enough of that. But I think that the sort of the tone of Love and Rockets was a massive influence on all of us. The way that Jaime had this world of real characters, but there was elements of super beings in it, and it was almost like they were. It's like the superheroes might be living off in Metropolis, or Gotham, or or New York if it's Marvel, but these guys lived in the arse end of nowhere, so you didn't really get to see any of that, but it was in there, and I think that really fascinated us. It's like these characters, these really real characters, but where fantastic things could happen.
I think it's so interesting going back for me, because it wasn't up until like.
And interestingly, Titan, all the first copies of Love and Rockets that I read were reprinted by Titan here. So there's even a through line with that.
I'm very jealous and also very glad, because there was no way in hell I could have afforded any of that stuff importing it when I was a kid. But there's this whole world when I got older that has always been there, right? Like doing this channel has been a huge blessing for me, because I've gotten to know people overseas, and not just publishers, but a lot of my viewers overseas that introduce me to, like, oh, you want to get into Judge Dredd? Here's some progs. But I'm an idiot. I like to go from the very beginning, right?
I like all that as well, because it's interesting to see how things progress, isn't it?
But every one of them were right.
And I like those. I mean, it's like, I like those early Carlos Esquera.
Oh my gosh!
It's
so, but it was like, I think volume 5 that hooked me of the.
What stories was that? What stories?
That was the one that introduced the 4.
I knew the Dark Judges.
Come on, they get better than that, man. That was so good.
Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, it's just like God. I mean,
like, things like that I had no idea existed. Like I've known of Judge Dredd even as a kid, because
when you when you look at that. The Dark
oh
Judges,
yeah, look at that, dude.
Taking over Judge Anderson. So that is when I must have. God, I don't know what year it is. I think I must have been. Oh, I can tell you what year it is. 81. This says so. Yeah, I was. Is that God? What's that? August 81. I was 20 when this was coming out.
No,
81. Sorry, no. No, that's wrong. No. It's 91. Got my maths. No, so I got it. They must have reprinted this in the mid 80s, because I remember reading it at about 17. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, this was like that, and I think they were serializing Steve Dillon's Werewolf Dreads. I don't know if you know those ones. That was being serialized in 2000 AD when I was buying it. So that must be around 87. Yeah.
Man, yeah.
I didn't realize those stories. I didn't realize that was so early, 81. Wow.
Oh yeah. It makes sense when you look at when it started, because I've been reading them through the case files, and when you look at when it started in the 77, right? And then you look at it's in volume 5.
That's Titan.
Yeah, I think it's just wonderful to find all these stories, like Nemesis, the Warlock, and then
brilliant
Strontium Dog, and then like all these slain, like things that have existed.
Yeah. But I mean both Bisley and Fabry slains. I was reading. When I started reading it, Glenn Fabry was doing the art, and then Bisley took over.
That to me was like finding Conan.
Yeah,
as a kid, right? I mean,
yeah. So I found Conan as a kid. I mean, my introduction to comics was there was a. I live like where we're all met and from is from a seaside town on the south coast, and there used to be a little gift store that had a cardboard box underneath the counter. And me and my best friend, who's a massive Marvel head, he's been collecting. Like, I met him when I was 4, and he's been collecting Marvel since he was 5. I mean, he's got a room like the size of my office he's never stopped collecting. It's like his collection's insane. But we used to sit in this newsagent and just leaf through these out of order Bronze Age Marvels. So I really gravitated towards Conan, Silver Surfer, Doctor Strange, Thor. I liked that sort of cosmic age. When it was really going out there, when psychedelia had become pretty mainstream, and Stan and Jack and Buscema were really telling those far out stories.
Mm-hmm.
That was my first introduction to comics. And that's like.
So your introduction to comics and all that, like it was something that we took for granted here, but
Yeah, and it was completely rare here, you know.
Yeah,
So
exactly. But everything that you all had over there, we didn't have until
the opposite. Yeah, exactly. Which is as I'm saying. So like, yeah, that you know, the indie British comics were just like, oh, that's what we had, you know.
That's what you've been. And so,
and French comic and French, you know, French.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah, metal hurlant and you know, heavy metal, and
we
obviously
tried to get that. Like even DC tried to get into the humanoids. Oh, humanoids is now doing it, but like the whole heavy not heavy metal, the metal, the metal horror, and there was another French magazine that they tried to do.
I mean, I learned to read as a kid through reading Asterix books, not Tintin. I really loved Asterix.
And we didn't get Asterix here, like
that artwork. I mean, it's like it's quite. I mean, the draftsmanship in Asterix, the writing as well. They're so witty, and just so beautifully drawn. Those books, you know. I mean, it's like I've still got my collection that I had from when I was a kid. Of all of those, some of them like my dad had handed me. I've got some first edition, you know, ones from the 60s. So I've always been into story and image being combined. You know, it's one of those things you don't really realize it's, you know, when it's the same, I suppose. You know, I look at my son and just being, you know, even though like, you know, we're the first generation of gamers. I remember when the first Space Invaders machines came out, and I was stuck on them. Then, you know, Pac-Man and whatever came next. You know, my son, you know, it's just like he doesn't, you know, when it's like fishes don't know they're in water is the average allegory, isn't it? I get, you know, I didn't, you know, now I look back and realize I grew up through the golden age of television. You know, like television's, you know, just the way he interacts with screen storytelling is so different, you know, through YouTube and through the platforms, very different responses, I think. And it's just like I see my, you know, because my influences, I guess, are those indie comics, but also, you know, I didn't just come across Marvel through this box in a seaside gift store. I also came into it through Lou Ferrigno's Hulk. I came into it through you know, Linda Carter's Wonder Woman. You know, the incredible, was it the Incredible Spider-Man? Was that what it was called?
Amazing came in.
The Amazing, the TV, the TV version. All of those things, you know. I said that of course, Adam West Batman. You know, it's like I can remember hearing the theme tune to Adam West Batman when I was out in the garden. I must have been like 4, before I was at school, like 4, running in to sit in front of the TV. I thought these things were amazing.
Man, it's so cool just to talk about like the things you find when you're younger, right? And
how they stick with you, because all of these things,
absolutely, which is what makes this amazing, because this is the story, not these, but the stories up there are the ones I grew up with as a kid, and now I have the accessibility of just like going up there and like, oh, I want to go and read, you know, the Wolverine miniseries.
That is an amazing collection behind you. Come on, let's go.
Oh, thank you. Okay, so back to your Phoo action. That's for the first time things I've never read. Like, I had never read it, so I don't have the nostalgia for it. I, of course, knew Jamie Hewlett and Gorillaz and all that, and then
I know you probably had a passing aware. I don't know how much you knew Tank Girl as well.
Yeah, Tank Girl, mainly because of the I'll be honest, mainly because of the Laurie Petty movie that came out.
The MGM movie, yeah.
And then
lots of people found it.
Published them over here.
Yeah, they did. Yeah.
But how did you get involved? Tell me a little bit about the Phoo action, and how did you all make How
did I become? So as I said, Jamie had done. So Jamie did get the freebies, which is what it was originally called. The reason it got to become Phoo Action is where I become part of the story. So he'd done it for 12 months with the face, and he was supposed to be doing a second part of so he'd done 12 stories. He was taking a break, and then he was going to come back and do another year's worth of stories. Now the first 12 stories are loosely connected, but it's more like a villain of the week type format, if you think of it in TV formats. And it's kind of more Looney Tunes as well. Like everyone kind of resets. There is a story arc gradually, but it's not what it's about. It's like there is a starting point and there is an end in the 12 episodes, but that wasn't plotted out at the beginning. It's more like he knew he was coming to the end of a year, and like he thought of a way to finish that series. So it wasn't like he knew where he was going. With the second season, he wanted to tell a more involved, larger, ongoing narrative. I'd come back from art school, and I'd come back to, as I said, I'd moved to London, but I'd come back to visit, and I'd actually just done a comic strip with Philip Bond, and Jamie really loved things about what I'd done. And I think he was like, Alan had left Worthing. Alan, like the whole you mentioned the MGM movie. They like it kind of, it's amazing. Now there's, like yourself, there's a whole load of people who came to Tank Girl through the movie, and there's a lot of positive cult love for the movie, but it killed Tank Girl at the time, and it killed James.
I'm sure it did, yeah.
Because it's like it was before, it was just ahead of its time. And I think Rachel Talalay, who directed it, had I think she had a great vision for it, and I just don't think the studio understood it. They just wanted to take.
Well, Dread, same thing happened to Dread, remember?
It's exactly the same. Yeah, it's like, I am the law. No, you're not. No, you're not, Sly. Take the helmet off. I mean, I've seen recently that Carla Bain's wonderful Dread adaptation is #1 on HBO at the moment. So it's great that's finally.
That's really good. The Dread movie?
No, you know what they were going to do as the sequels, don't you?
I know.
They were going to do the Dark Judges as the sequels. It's like,
yeah. That broke my heart.
Yeah, that's just like what movies they would have been. But I'm a terrible digressor, so I'm coming back to
your Phoo. Yes.
So Jamie, as I said, so Alan had left, and I think he wanted to, he likes working in creative partnerships, in it being a collaboration, and he worked, funny, talking about Marvel, he works very, Tank Girl was done very much in a version of the Marvel method, in that Alan didn't go off and write the scripts and then hand them to Jamie, and Jamie illustrated them. They'd come up with an idea loosely together. Jamie would start illustrating. Alan would script some of that. Maybe he'd script some other. It would all happen in a loose form. And I think Jamie wanted a bit more of that, where he wasn't just writing it all himself. So he had a story outline idea, and we then sat down and broke that down into 12 parts. And we did a first episode, and people might have seen it in Jamie's Taschen book, which came out in 2017. There's a Phoo action section in it, and actually the first page of the first episode, which is is that one, appears in there, which was so it was called Phoo Action Lungs of Buddha, and you can see it's by Hewlett and Wakeham, and he actually illustrated that first episode in its entirety, and we had the story outline, and we thought it was job done. We were going to go, we went off and took the first issue up to meet the editors and went through the storyline. But there was an editorial, like the editor who loved Get the Freebies and loved the fact that it was satirizing a lot of the celebrity culture that the magazine celebrated. So it was kind of a counterpoint. And Richard Benson, who was the editor, kind of pushed Jamie quite hard to be even more acerbic, which is quite interesting. But we took it up, and there was an editorial change, and they didn't want comics in the magazine anymore.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So it was not only so we had this whole first episode illustrated and the whole story outline, but we had nowhere to go with it. And it's really, as I reflected on this recently, I was like, well, why didn't we just go to another publisher? And I was, because like I don't know if you know the history of the Phoo action book itself. It was initially going to come out with a publisher called Z2.
Yeah, that was alluded to when talking about.
I write about that in this book. The whole, but it wasn't through. I'm not going to go into the details of why we didn't bring it out with them, but when Jamie and I walked away from that contract with them, I went to the London Book Fair. I mean, it was quite fortuitous. I got the rights back a week before London Book Fair, and I just went to London Book Fair. And actually, I went with. So what I came out of the Z2 contract with, this here is a digital print of the book, of the first version of the book. This isn't.
This is what was going to be published through Z2.
Yeah. So I had this, and I went to the London Book Fair, and just I have one I only a week before. It was too late to set up any meetings other than my Titan one, because Titan had actually kicked the idea off about doing a collection of Phoo action, because where's that? I don't know if I know where that is. Hold on a second.
Sure. At what point do you remember
there's actually a Spanish version of
freebies.
Apollo's freebies. Yeah. I think that says shit, or I think that might say fuck in the comics, and it says joder.
Joder. Yeah.
Joder. Oh, there you go. Look. Mierda. So I don't know why I'm doing a Speedy Gonzalez accent. I'm sorry. My wife's Mexican, and I tend to do these and all
Gonzalez.
My uncles in Mexico are all ranchers from Jalisco, so I have quite an odd Spanish Mexican accent. But yeah, so that had been out, and I think they'd kind of been like, oh, we could do a trade paperback version, and I was like, actually, do you know about Phoo action? Do you know about this strip that never happened? Now, what had actually happened in the interim is like the artwork for the first episode had gone missing. With Jamie had left it at the face offices because he thought when we had the meeting it was then going to go to print, and then we found out it wasn't going to, and he never got it back. Fortunately, I had color photocopies of it, and the black and white line work still existed. So anyway, so I said to Titan, it's like, if we're going to do this, I want to print that for the first time. There's a whole Jamie Hewlett first episode of a comic strip that's never been printed. Well, people want to see that. And actually, I don't know whether Jamie's got a copy of it or not, but I've got a physical copy of our story outline that we did for the 12 issues. So I had that, and I was like, well, I want to tell the whole story. And not only is that, but you talked about the MGM Tank Girl film, the BB, like when I started another reason why I started working with Jamie is because I'd moved to London to work in film, and I wanted to work in film and TV. I through my fine art practices, I'd started working more and more with what's called time-based media in the fine arts, which is just which is anything that you consume over time. So recorded material, video material, and as I said, I've always loved story and image being connected. So I'd gone to London and I'd started working, not very successfully, as a music video director. Jamie had just finished Get the Freebies in the Face, and I went down and said, look, the Tank Girl didn't really work, but I think this could be a hilarious TV show. Get the Freebies. Why don't we see if we can pitch it and get a deal on it. And he said, and so what? Another reason, as well as I'd written those comics, he was like, well, if we do this series of comics together, that will cement it as our IP, and will make a bigger case for, with the second series of comics for an adaptation of it. So when it died, what actually happened was, we got a closer working relationship than we'd ever had before. So when Gorillaz happened, he asked me to work alongside him, but I was still developing the TV pitch. Now this here is what we pitched the TV series with. This is a
that was the live action TV series.
So this is a booklet that I put together with Jamie's art. So it's like a prototype for the book, actually. Really, when you look at a lot of it, so this tells this is the what we took to pitch meetings with people like the BBC. But we had a deal to do the adaptation before Gorillaz. ITV Studios wanted us to make a pilot with them, and that was with the production company who made the BBC sci-fi comedy Red Dwarf. So who knows what that version had been like, because it might have actually been closer to the source material, because what happened with the BBC adaptation was it was commissioned by the drama department, and they wanted this hour-long drama, and it was like, okay, so every time you tried to tell a joke, there'd be like, or talk about Whitey. So one of her super weapon that she has are utility pants that she has they're larger on the inside than they are on the outside. She has a almost endless arsenal of weapons and vehicles that she can pull out of her pants. And the BBC were like, well, why can she do that? And I'd be like, well, because she can. It's comics. It's a fantastic world. And again, this is still before comic book movies. So that I think a lot of the adaptations that have happened to Jamie's work have just been because they were why they haven't quite worked is because the landscape wasn't there. And we were working with people who didn't understand the medium. And I think, it's even though they were excited about working on comic book material, the only reference they had was the 60s Batman, and they thought it was a bit campy, and they didn't really understand they didn't understand. Well, I think this is even happening in comic book movies. It's only now that you're getting comic book true costumes and characters. Really, there was a while, it's like the whole of the X-Men. X-Men series, they all had to wear black leather all the time because Wolverine couldn't possibly be in yellow. Why not? It's great.
No, you're absolutely right. So at what point did Titan come in then? Like how long into the project that you guys were already working on that?
So as I said, I'd met them in 2017, and they'd wanted
long time coming then.
They'd wanted to do it, and I wasn't so sure. Now there was a small thing in between of a global pandemic and a lockdown where all of my work dried up, and I was like, oh God, what am I gonna do? I've got to do something. Got to start. I was working as a creative consultant at the time. I'm also an independent film producer, and I was doing bits and pieces of creative work to bring in money while I was developing my films. Because when there's no money in development. In fact, development costs money. Like you only make money when you go into production. So I was doing these bits and pieces of creative work, and that dried up. People didn't need my creative consultancy in projects that were in hiatus. So I was like, oh, hold on, I've got this folder that's got it's got these photocopies of Phoo action in. I've got all these original pieces of artwork of Jamie's. I'm about to show you some. I mean, God, here, first things I'm sure I've got his. When I say I've got some original pieces of artwork of Jamie's, I mean here the top ones are actually there's a page of the 4th episode of Tank Girl there where Booger first appeared. And there's a Gorillaz piece, but that's not what we're talking about. I've got pieces like, here we go. Sorry, they're all in a folder here. I've got, that's a page of get the freebies. That was actually never ever published, because Jamie did a few passes on the strip that he rejected, and that's all talked about in the book. So yeah, you know, I've got. That's a really great piece. That's actually my favorite piece.
Oh,
You know,
nice.
amazing. And these little guys turned up in the Gorillaz website, actually, because, you know, after, you know, we were like, oh God, this is a project that might never happen. So we sort of put things back in. So yeah, I was like, I've got all these. I mean, that's just stunning.
Man, that is so wicked, dude, that you just have these.
Yeah.
So wicked.
I could keep pulling more. I mean, I've got all sorts of bits. I've got all sorts of bits of amazing bits of comic book history. Lucky to be around this stuff as it was being made. So yeah, and I was like, well, okay, so yeah, no, Titan wanted to do this, but at that time as well, Gorillaz. So through lockdown, Gorillaz put out the Almanac, and that was with Z2. And I'd spoken with Alan Martin. I mean, Alan Martin is sort of a Tank Girl cottage industry now. He self-publishes, and he'd done like the 21st Century Tank Girl book, which he'd done a Kickstarter on. So he was really advising me to do a Kickstarter and self-publish. And I thought about it, but I mean, obviously, a book of this scale, some 474 pages, and you know, with silver gilded edges and gatefolds and prints and whatever. I was just like, I can't handle this publishing. I can't handle this production by myself, even though I brought on a friend to work on production with me. Jess came on board early and worked with me on production, but she was like, well, look, why don't we speak to Z2? And the CEO at the time was a massive Jamie Hewlett head. And he was just like, yep, let's do it. So it was like, before I knew it, like we had that deal. Now, once that imploded, I was like, okay, so I'll go meet. I went to London Book Fair. I mean, the first meeting I had was with Titan, and I was a bit like, sorry guys, you talked to me about this a while ago, didn't you? We could have done this, couldn't we? Because I'd pitched my idea. Hi, yeah, how you doing?
She wanted to come and say hi. She texted me, can I come and say hi?
How you doing?
I'm doing good. How are you?
Yeah, good. Nice to meet you. What's that shirt you're wearing?
Mega Man.
Bit Brigade.
Oh, yeah, that's so cool. I love it. What's your name?
Lydia.
Hey, nice to meet you, Lydia. It's Matt. So I'm just telling your dad about how we ended up making this big
Jamie Hewlett artwork.
This big Phoo action. But yeah, I was just showing you. Yeah. Your dad. Yeah, we sent it to your dad. Yeah, I was just showing your dad a lot of original Jamie Hewlett stuff. You'll like it. Where's that one that I showed you?
Yeah, it's really freaking cool. Like, just to see it.
Here you go. Here's one you'll like. Here you go. Look, there's an original text.
Oh my gosh, it's so cool.
Yeah, how about that? And I've got, here's one that, okay, I'll show you another one. So this is the first ever printed image of Tank Girl. This is one Jamie did before Deadline #1 came out, and it was for ID magazine. That's run as an advert.
That's cool.
Yeah,
that's so crazy. You've been a big part of this.
Yeah. I'm certainly woven into the fabric of it.
Yeah, that has inspired generation after generation, including her. So and she's got friends that listen to.
I hear you like the Humans album.
Clint Eastwood is the first one that you listened to, right?
Well, no, Gorillaz. The self-title album.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, so very good taste. That's the only album that I worked on. So. I commend it. I think you've chosen the right one. You can come back.
But I was about to wrap up the interview, and she was like, "Oh, can I come down there really quick?" And I was like, "Of course."
You've got a school appointment, right?
Yeah, my wife and I need to get going, but give me a kiss and go up there, and I'm gonna say goodbye to Matt. You want to say bye to Matt?
Bye.
Okay.
Bye. Lovely to meet you, Lydia.
Thank you.
Bye.
So
yeah,
what's in the works after this then?
let me just wrap that up. So yeah,
Sure.
so that's how Titan came aboard. I spoke with lots of other publishers.
Yeah.
I had some really good meetings, and people were super interested, and that was really like validating, because obviously I'd put this book together kind of in a vacuum, and like it hadn't gone out, and getting people to see it and getting that response was great. So yeah, but then it just made sense to do it with Titan. Ned's spoken to me originally, and it's also a British publisher. I mean, Titan's the oldest British publisher. It's much easier working, when I can go up to their offices and have meetings rather than being in other time zones and, emails going in the morning and not getting answered to the next day. So yeah, it worked out well. They're good.
Well, I'm glad
they're good people to work with.
I don't know how it would have turned out with Z2. I'll be honest with you. I've got some of their books. But Titan has been killing it with just the different formats they've been coming out with for years.
I can tell you how it would have come out with Z2. A bit crappy. Okay. The extra time walking away. I walked from that. They're great guys. I've got nothing against them. But it's a different format. I think I delivered a beast that was too big for them. And going with Titan and the time I got to spend with it and work on it extra, I'm so glad it didn't come out, that first version of it, because it needed that editorial oversight and publishing experience. Shout out to Kevin in production at Titan, because I certainly vexed him talking about the print processes I wanted in the paper stocks.
Well, it was a long time coming, and I will say the finished product is absolutely stunning. It's one of the most beautiful books that I've seen Titan, and I've seen a lot of Titan books come out, but it's one of the most beautiful books that they've done. I mean, and I know there's different formats, but the deluxe edition alone is just absolutely stunning. So I know what did Jamie say when he saw the finished product? Like,
so I've got a long-standing. Right at the beginning, I wrote to Jamie and said, look, I told him, I said, look, like, I'm in this situation. We've had these offers to do the book before. I think I actually want to do a Phoo action book now. And he was like, well, that's cool, Matt, you can do it. But you do it with my blessing. I did the graphic design for him. Along with the zombie flesh, I hired the zombie flesh eaters team, which was his design studio, to service all the design and web work that he needed. So we have a shorthand. He knew that he could trust me if I was going to design it. I was only ever for me, as I said, it's like, if I was going to put this book out, there's been so many misfires with, the comics not happening and the TV show not happening, and I was like, if I'm doing this, I'm doing it properly, which is why I walked away from the Z2 deal. It just was like, this isn't going to quite happen properly because it's too big, So he trusted me, and I treated it like any other professional. So that I work on it in different ways. Obviously, I'm the writer of it, and so I'm a creative on it. But I'm also the art director. So I presented it to him as I would like any commercial design project. I showed him the mood boards at the beginning and how and the tone that I intended to present it. So it was a mix between being an archival retrospective, but also the graphic design having the same tone as the original comics. So, being a mix in between that, because it's a real hybrid book, and how we show all those things. So I started off very early, so there weren't any surprises, and I made sure Jamie saw every step. And it's the only professional job I've ever had in my life where I'm not if Jamie, we're the co-owners of it, so it's our property. So it's not like he's the client, but it was really good to have him to present to, because it was like, I've got to a stage where it's like he could have said, no, I don't want that, at any point, because Jamie's very like he there's stuff that I've shown you here, like this image. I've got it because he was going to rip it up and throw it away. And I was in his flat.
That's crazy. That belongs in a museum.
And I was in his flat at the time. And this is 1988 or 89. And I said, if you don't want that, can I have it? And he was like, yeah, if you want it, because he doesn't care about stuff, and he's also doesn't really want. It's like he's more interested in what he's doing next. So he could have like taken in, he could have been like, no, I don't want that in it. I don't like, he could have taken the thing apart, because what Jamie, when he doesn't like something, he's very clear. But if you do something well, he trusts you and he lets you run with it. So it's been nothing but a joy to work on from that perspective. Jamie's been super supportive, and I WhatsApped him today because we're working on a standard edition, and I've showed him ideas for the new cover, and he's just like, yep, that's great.
Has that Tank Girl picture, has that ever been printed in anything?
I think I scanned it and sent it to Alan, and I think he's done something with it now.
Okay.
But up until 4 or 5 years ago, no, the world hadn't seen it. It was like,
because I consider that as important as the first Eastman and Laird Ninja Turtles drawings, right? You remember the story of both Eastman and Laird doodling a funny picture of a turtle with nunchucks, right?
No, I mean, it's crazy, right? I mean, it's not.
I think it's wonderful that you kept it. That's great.
It's either done it's probably done synchronously with issue 1, because it's done in the same style. It's all, it's done with brush and ink, and obviously you can see what size it's done up at. It's like, I mean, it was printed at this size, so it's 10 times up, so it's super detailed. But the first episode of Tank Girl was done like that, so I don't know whether it was done. I think he probably did finish the episode, and that was delivered to deadline for episode 1, and then they probably asked him to do this illustration for a press release.
Man, that's crazy. Now before we wrap up, I do want to ask, where can people find you next? What's your next project? What are you working on?
So I'm just closing finance on an independent British feature film. That was actually announced. It's the Berlin Film Festival in Berlin Market at the moment. I'm usually in Berlin for that, but we're busy closing finance, so me and my production partner couldn't go away. But it was announced in Screen Daily. We've just attached a great young actor British actor called Michael Ward, who was one of the stars of Top Boy, and it's got some big films coming up next year. We're really excited to have landed him as talent. So I'm going to be filming that in April in Wales.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, super excited. It's something I was working on pre-lockdown, and obviously the film industry just you're not making a road film revenge thriller during lockdown, so that it's taken longer to get it off the ground, because there was that 2-year hiatus in the middle, and we hadn't, that's really exciting to be doing that, and I have some other things in development, and I'm also percolating some art. I said, there's people who are reading my prose novel that I wrote for, as I said, in the Phoo action book, I wanted to continue that 12 episode story, and I wrote it as a 12-part prose novel illustrated by Philip Bond. Just going to find, which is, it's just a double page spread of it there. These are I wrote this this is chapter 3 here, Mad for Footy. I wrote a 70,000 word novel based on that treatment that I was telling you about. With his amazing artwork by Philip Bond, who was a contemporary of Jamie's and actually worked on Get the Freebies alongside him. So it was really great to square that circle. People were asking me, there's people who were reading it for me at the time and said, "Oh, what are you going to do anymore?" And I was like, I wrote a 70,000 word prose novel in 3 months, and at the time I was like, I'm never going to do anything with this again. once I've, putting this whole book together it took a lot of energy, but I'm on the other side of it now, and I love these characters, and I do have some ideas for some other stories. So hopefully, after I've made my film, the back end of the year, I can start writing. I'd like to do those as comics with some new artists as well.
No, man, that's good. That's good to hear that you're still everywhere, if you will, right? Not just in comics,
I'm
but
here, there, and everywhere. It's the Beatles lyric, isn't it?
Awesome, man. And people can keep up with you because you are on Twitter, you're on Instagram.
I'm mainly a grumpy old man on Twitter because I'm not very keen on the direction that platform's going in, and we won't go into that because I will get sweary. Instagram, I haven't posted on Instagram this year yet. I was super busy at the end of last year on it. They changed the format on that, and the Phoo Action Instagram page was one long collage in the square format. When they changed the format, they screwed my collage. So I've been mourning that. I think I'm at the last stage of acceptance, and it's time for me to. But yeah, you can find. My DMs are open. I chat. I'm always there. I still continue my stories on there. So you can catch me. The main hub for Phoo Action on socials is Instagram. There's obviously people can go to phooaction.com and find out all about the book. I put together a microsite for the book that's like pretty much as I did with Gorillaz. It's I wanted every touchstone that you came to with the Phoo IP to be reflective of my the vision for it, the design style. So if you like what you see, the taste that you get on the website, you'll love the book. I feel confident saying that now. I'm not in a place where I feel proud of the content and the quality and just the heft of the Phoo Action book.
Well, I know that it's definitely a labor of love, and it has shown in every one of those pages of that book.
Oh, thank you,
Omar. It is still available in print, the deluxe edition. There was a limited edition. I'm not sure if Titan still has those or not.
Super limited. There are some of the signed limited edition. That's a real collector's item that has more prints in it. It's hand signed by Jamie and myself.
That's awesome.
Comes in a clamshell. I mean, I know you have a copy of that.
Absolutely beautiful. Yeah. I just want to thank you and everybody, Will and everybody at Titan, for your time, and thank you all so much for watching and tuning in and seeing some really cool stuff in there, man. Some behind the scenes. I love hearing behind the scenes stories as much as I love reading about it, and then holding up some original pieces of what I consider comic book history. Thank you, Matt, again for your time.
Thank you for your time. And thank you for your platform.
Lovely to meet you, man.
And so lovely to meet you. Real pleasure.
And
thanks for your support.
Absolutely. And you come back anytime. And
thank you.
Stay in touch, my brother. Everybody stay healthy and safe. You all have a wonderful day.